She kind of came up here and left. Yeah, I thought she was gonna be like right here. No. Here she goes. Hi. Yeah.
So once you already so just once you get ready, yeah, once when you get back to the next table there, if you want to use that mic, that you can kick off the panel with that mic or the handheld.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, just whenever you pass the mics around.
Yeah, we got two.
Yeah. So yeah, are you gonna start seated or are you gonna start from the podium?
I'll probably start at the phone.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, great. Thank you. You better stop. You better stop. Margaret, thank you so much for you helped make this happen. I mean, you let me just. You just were like, hey, I heard you had an idea.
Oh, and I'm the second one. Yeah, so we were the first in the
Then
country.
between you and Brianna, you made it happen. Now
I'm good.
you have to tell me that.
Hey. Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to invite you to come on back. We're going to start the Lessons from Cities panel. I'm going to invite you to come on back. If you can hear my voice, I'm going to invite you to come on back. Love the conversation. That's what conferences are about. Yeah, I invite you to turn your attention to the beautiful people on the panel today, doing big things in their cities. You're going to get to meet each one of them. Again, my name is Tafira Rushton. Everybody calls me T. If you see me on the streets, hey T, what's up? How you doing? Yeah, we are here to have an exciting conversation with some of the leaders in urban agriculture across cities. So I'm really excited to kick off. Are we ready with this? Does this work? All right. This is like my favorite slide right here because Detroit is all about community. We have so many leaders who have really stepped up in big ways to figure out vacant land solutions, to grow food, to improve their communities, to teach the youth. So these are just some of the pictures of the folks you will see out in our community. That top left picture is myself. I was recently appointed Director of Urban Agriculture last fall for Detroit. Thank you. And then like 6 months into the position, the Director of Sustainability took off and they offered me that position. And so I'm now Director of Sustainability for the City of Detroit, which is super exciting. It's super exciting to have someone with an ag background in sustainability because if you know anything about sustainability right now, it's all about electrification and all of these numbers and everything, which is great and awesome. And we do need to reduce our carbon emissions and all of that things, but it really starts here with the land, right? It starts here with the land and community, and that's what Detroit is all about. I also want to make sure you know Patrice Brown. She's standing right there, walking through. She's taking over the ag position here in the city. So we work together inside the Office of Sustainability. All right, I wanted to give you a couple facts. This map that you see is from an organization called Keep Growing Detroit, where I worked at for many years before I came to the city. But it shows you all of the gardens that we have in the city. So we have over 2,000 gardens in the city of Detroit. Yes, clap that up because it's really, really big. And I showed that picture of community because all of that work has been a real grassroots movement here in Detroit. It's not come from city government. City government came after. City government came out of the grassroots movement that was happening. But yeah, these represent backyard gardens, community gardens who are taking on a vacant lot in their neighborhood, and even larger projects who are going on and feeding a lot of folks in their community. I also want to lift up the work of the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund, which I'm also a co-founder in that before I got to the city. Yeah, thank you. That work really came out of the fact that there was so much vacant land in the city, but it was really, really, really hard to get a piece of it and to own it legitly. A coalition of 4 different organizations got together. That's Keep Growing Detroit, Detroit Black Food Security Network, Oakland Ave. We all got together and we have been we've supported over 70 black farmers get purchase land, go through all the process that it takes, and the hurdles really held their hand and provide the capital to do this. So it's a really, really cool program. I also want to lift up the work of the Detroit Food Policy Council. If you were in that session, the Detroit Food Policy Council, yeah, clap that up, because somebody was just saying all of this work is nothing. I think this was Betty Wiggins was saying, if it's not tied to policy, if it's not codified, if it's not permanent in our cities. And so want to lift up that policy piece, because the Detroit food policy came out of community also. This was a grassroots-led effort to promote policy in the city. One, really quickly, we've gone through and we've codified urban ag in the city. So this is a legal land use in the city. Right now, we're working on animal husbandry and composting for our city. And I wanted to also lift up the land-based projects team, which is really streamlining the purchase to permit process for growers. Additionally, we're also working on water access in the city. So all these are the things that we're working on. I'm going to pass the mic over to Ms. Mackey, if you know her, right here. This is New York's Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. Give it up.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, T. Should I stand up or is it okay to sit?
You can sit, whatever.
I'm going to sit. Is that okay? Okay. Hi, everybody. Afternoon. So yes, I am Kiana Mickey. I'm New York City's Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. I am the inaugural director. The office was established in September 2022 by legal mandate ushered in by City Council, but established through established by Mayor Adams. And you know, there is a long-standing history of urban agriculture in New York City way before this office started. And there's not just there's existing work of Green Thumb that initially started as a grassroots group that lives within the Agency of Parks and Recs. But even before that, there is the long-standing history and work of the land stewards in the communities that were doing the work in their neighborhoods and decided to change vacant lots into community gardens and places of healing and respite. And that needs to be shared, and I just wanted to briefly acknowledge that in terms of the history of why there's an office. And in New York City, we have this diverse history of urban ag, stewardship, land access, food production, climate resiliency, but also an emerging part around business. And what I saw in the opportunity to build the office was that we needed to find a way to have a mission that really met both, but we really need to be anchored by a North Star of equity, economic, racial, and environmental. And in order to do that, we needed to support the breadth of urban ag stakeholders, the breadth of urban ag models, but the reality that resources, land, and access are not equitable in our city. So that's really where the root of our work is, to empower the most impacted. So really briefly, and we'll get more into it with the group, I want to just highlight here is just some of the initiatives and actions that are really anchored in trying to build the roots of this urban ag office. One is our reimagining farm to school work, this connection on trying to, again, create opportunities of economic viability, sustainability of community gardeners and work and amplifying their work in community. Luckily, we have some of those farmers here in the audience,
But it was important to find a way to have an initiative that connected ag education to public school students in a way that can inform in the classroom and in the community gardens. So students themselves were learning from farmers that were representative and looked like them and had a connection to what they were learning in perhaps their school garden, and knowing that within walking distance in their community, there were gardens and farmers that looked like them in doing that work. There's also a connection around procurement and city-based procurement, the economic viability of farmers that are providing culturally relevant and local food, and a way to try to make a better pathway, an easier pathway to support their businesses and connect to city procurement. And then leading into the pipeline work, for me, I think there's oftentimes people talk about MWBE work, but for me, the real core issue of that was, one, not just trying to meet a mayoral mandate, but realizing that there are a lot of great practitioners in our urban ag and growing space, our climate resilient space, our supply chain work, that are doing it either in a nonprofit structure or just as individuals or just through sweat equity, and are not really operationalizing that into a business. And I wanted to make sure resources that were available for small business got to food and farm businesses, and trying to just create new pipelines and opportunities. So there were ways to build certifications or lean into that to help sustain and help identify ways that you could start a business that is in the work that you're doing, and that there are opportunities in the city for your businesses. And then lastly, exploring innovative land use. I think probably all of us are struggling with how to create access, land tenure, land stewardship in cities. New York City probably being one of the most expensive cities to try to access land. So for us, it's really been about the office exploring, not just supporting what's already here in our community garden network of 550 plus, of community gardens under the Green Thumb Network, but what about the underutilized land and property in New York City that might need to be explored and expanded on to create more scaled food production, more climate resiliency, and again, create inside opportunities at the city and leveraging resources to the farmers and growers and policy advocates already on the ground doing that work. So just a little bit of what we've been doing the past year and a half, and I'm happy to pass the mic.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to be here and to the committee that put this all together. It's really exciting to see so many people here in support of urban ag. My name is Casey Hill, and I am the new to the county, and I'm new role at the county, and I'm new to the county, food systems manager, the county of Santa Clara, California, that place where we have, not reliable access to water, as someone mentioned earlier. I was like, yeah, I'm going to own that. Yeah, true. But with a rich history of agriculture, for sure. So if you're not familiar with Santa Clara County, we are a county, large urban county, about population of about 2 million people, about half of which lives in San Jose, California. So this is most of Silicon Valley. It's located within Santa Clara County, so I feel you on the expense of land. That's true for us as well. So my role as food systems manager was created actually as a direct result of what you see right up here on the screen of our county Santa Clara food system work plan. So this is a food system work plan that was approved by our Board of Supervisors in 2021 as a result of extensive input from community with leadership from our University of California Cooperative Extension. Lucy Diekman, who's the Food Systems Urban Ag Advisor, is here. She's speaking or moderating, I think, tomorrow, so you'll get to meet her, in partnership with a number of county agencies, as well as, I think, something like 70 different individuals and nonprofit organizations. So one of the strategies that was called out in this food system work plan was to staff the work at the county. County includes 15 cities across what is a fairly large geographical area, which includes both very urban areas as well as very agricultural in our South County in particular. So it's very diverse in many ways. So I know this is a very just brief introduction to everything, so I just want to say that first off, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about two very specific large urban ag projects that we have within the county. And those are actually a county park that is a 280-acre agricultural park, and it's a regional county park, as well as a City of San Jose regional park. The county is Marshall Cottle Park, and the city's is Emma-Prush Farm Park, located within East San Jose, where in both cases we have co-located in partnership as a county, or in the case of the City of San Jose, a number of different other nonprofit organizations to support the work together. And full disclosure here, before I came to the county in December, so I'm 7 months new in this role, I'd spent the previous 10 years as executive director of an urban ag organization called Vegilution. And Vegilution is one of the CBOs that's in partnership with our new Oakland FSA. So very proud to be a part of all of these different ways in which we're supporting urban ag. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about all of these initiatives a little bit later, so I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance here, and so honored to be part of this panel. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. So thanks so much for having me. My name is Ash Richards. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Director of Urban Agriculture for the City of Philadelphia. So, yeah, woo! Philly in the house, where's my Philly people at? Okay, it's like we're like a hornet's nest, like wherever one person goes, we all swoop it, so anyway. So I've been in this position, I cannot believe it, for 5 years. The anniversary was in May, so we started this position in 2019 May, and right before COVID, which was a hoot, and one way to say it was a hoot, mainly because COVID just showed us how fractured and completely absurd and ridiculous by design our food systems are in each and every one of our cities, right? So I've been in city government painstakingly for 12 years. I love being a public servant. Before I came to Parks, this is my third city department, I'm obsessed. So before I came to Parks and Rec, I was at City Planning Commission. I'm a trained urban planner for 5 years, and before that I was at the Department of Water doing green stormwater infrastructure for 2 years. So I'm a farmer as well. My lineage is on both sides of my family are liberated Jamaican farmers. So my parents were farmers, my grandparents and great-grandparents, etc. And that's essentially how I got introduced to the work. But then I didn't actually get a chance to do food systems work until I started moving out of city planning into this role as the director. And then before I came to the city, I was doing community organizing with More Gardens in the South Bronx. It's a fantastic organization, and I got to work with Mama Kay, who's here, Karen Washington. And fun fact, really quick, the farm that we worked on, La Finca del Sur, Farm of the South, was started by Black and Latina residents in South Bronx. And so we worked on that project together over a decade ago, and it still exists. So that just shows you the power of when you move the nonprofit industrial complex to the side and put communities to the front, how long-lasting our projects can be. And we learned that yesterday being at D-Town, which is amazing. So this is Farm Philly. Before I came to Farm Philly, we didn't have logos, we didn't have any way to communicate with residents, so this is why we have these beautiful images here. Our mission is simple: to support the sovereignty and collective determination for residents to grow their own food on their own terms. How do we do that? By a lot of things, by being overachievers, of course. We do programming, we do planning, we do initiatives, we do policy. So in our programs, we have this slew of programs. So last year we began our new land access program. So many of you have parks departments. Parks have a ton of land, right? It's all deed restricted. Well, what's the front door for residents to get access to that land? Oftentimes you just need to know somebody in that parks department, and we were just like, enough. We have a translated application in 6 languages in the city that are prominent in our gardens, so that people can have direct access to parkland. So you can lease land from us, which is awesome, right? So you can, I was just like, this is ridiculous, no more of that. So you can lease land from us at no cost, $1, and you can also not lease land from us, because if you lease land, you gotta pay for your own water, y'all. But if you just come in as an urban garden or a community garden on our rec center land, free. The water utilities is paid for, and we help you build out your garden and farm. So it's massively incredible. We have a community compost network where we design, build, and train and educate residents, and we give them all the tools, the sifters, the scales, the wheelbarrows, everything they possibly could need to run a community-led community composting project in their neighborhoods, and it works. So we have 11 sites. We're about to add 12 more sites. The goal is to have anywhere from 50 to 100 sites over the course of the next 5 years, and we're well on our way to do that. Awesome. I'm just going to run through these really quick just so you know what they are, but I'm really proud of this. I was able to work on this for the last 3 years, which is the Agriculture Resource Center. So my big goal in my role, and hopefully it will continue into perpetuity with the next person that comes in after me, is that I want residents to be able to drive into any one of our parks centers and be able to get all the tools, the seeds, the wood, right? The compost, the soil, the mulch for free, no cost, right? And get the education for free, no cost. So that's all about creating urban agriculture as infrastructure. It's a part of our local food system, right? So the same way that you can go to a library and rent a book for free or go to school for free, you should be able to go into your city, or whatever city you're in, and get resources to grow your own food for free. So that's what the Agriculture Resource Center is. We have tools that cost $1 all the way up to $5,000 that people can just lend for free. We have a propagation program. When it's active, we're doing 200,000 seedlings in 2 months to propagate. We opened that up, sliding scale, to residents across the city. We have a municipal farm that's at 1 acre. We donate about 5,000 pounds of food to local food pantries and mutual aid projects. Planning, we have this beautiful Growing from the Root plan. It's our city's first urban agriculture plan. Raise your hand if you got an urban ag plan in your city. Okay.
But I've read yours.
This is a PSA announcement. You have to have a plan. You have to. As much as I am tired of planning, I'm tired of talking, you have to have a plan. We realized we've been talking for decades, literally a decade with groups. None of us wrote it down. It was not written in a document. Right? So then city council members get to scratch their head and say, oh, we never heard that water was an issue. We never heard that, people wanted to keep chickens on their land. So you got to write it in a plan, right? And better yet, someone said in the previous thing, codify it. Make sure that if you leave or your department or your administration changes, that it's there in perpetuity. So Growing from the Root is very special, and I'll tell you why. It says urban agriculture plan, but when you open it, it's actually a food systems plan for our city. It's a comprehensive, not a master, but a comprehensive plan for the next 10 years. Here's the roadmap, 89 recommendations. We can implement 89 recommendations in 10 years, y'all. So that's exactly what we're trying to do, right? And so get a plan for your city, start there, get an urban ag director or a team together, and you can do it. We'll talk more about that later. And I'm just gonna stop there because we have so much to talk about, but farmphilly.org, if you're interested. Again, we're a city department, but we had to make our own website because our city website was atrocious. So they don't let us do it. So anyway, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Really a pleasure to be here. My name is Amanda Welker. I am the County Executive Director for Portland, Oregon with the Farm Service Agency. I came on board about May last year, so I'm a little over a year into this new role, into this pilot program through the Farm Service Agency in an urban setting, a new setting, developing new partnerships, figuring out what we can actually offer to our producers, and really developing those relationships with key stakeholders as we move through this pilot. Portland, there is a picture of one of our rooftop gardens in Portland, Oregon. I can say that this work started a long time ago, and it's because I've been around in agriculture in Oregon a long time. I started working with NASS, the Agricultural Statistics Service. I worked in the state legislature on the water and business committees. I worked for the state commodity commissions and marketing. I've also done regional, local, international marketing and trade work. But really, you know, I had been this urban person living in the middle of Portland, Oregon with this passion for agriculture and said, what am I doing? I need to focus on my own community, take this knowledge that I have, and, you know, teach people how to maneuver the government, who to talk to in the government, how it's structured, what's going on. So that's what I'm trying to do. We had a very active food policy council, 2002 to 2012. Man, we were being written about in the New York Times as this like food mecca. We were, you know, getting all kinds of publicity, and we were really, I would say, an early adopter in urban agriculture. You know, when budgets fade, when new priorities come up, that food policy council went away, and those positions in the city went away. So we don't have kind of the energy behind it that we did at one time. Portland's also unique in our land use policy. Anybody that's familiar with our state, we have a very unique land use policy. We have something called an urban growth boundary that surrounds the city of Portland very simply. Every 10 years, that boundary is reviewed to see if we're going to expand our urban growth. Farmland in Oregon has been protected by this urban growth boundary. That has been a value for Oregonians for a long time, protecting our farmland. And now we're saying, oh, we need farmland inside the urban growth boundary that has been designated for development. So you can kind of see the conflict there and kind of what we're up against. Community gardens, lots of community gardens through our Parks and Rec. Farm to school, again, we've got a very, very strong farm to school network. We were, I think, the first state in the nation to actually give a position for farm to school in the State Department of Education and the State Department of Agriculture. And that has really helped. But our community gardens right now, we have an at least a year waiting list to be in a community garden, and that's for the not so desirable locations. Some of the desirable locations, we're looking at a 7 to 9 year waiting list for community plots. Food access and food security, obviously COVID highlighted all that, what we need to do that. We also have some natural disasters on the West Coast, right? We're looking at earthquakes, we're looking at volcanoes, wildfires. Those things are real that we're really kind of planning for and making sure that we've got a secure food base. And then recently, more recently, in 2018, the voters of Portland voted for something called PSEF, the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And a piece of that work is for regenerative agriculture. Now, I still think we have some work to do on definitions around regenerative agriculture, but at least it's there. And so there's quite a bit of funding in that fund. This is Side Yard Farm. I believe this was the first FSA loan for an urban farm in the country. And, you know, we're working with that organization and others like it. Talked about resiliency. We've got a lot of small business grants through our community development organizations and our economic development organizations. One of the big pieces of the regenerative agriculture is the urban forestry, right? We live in a part of the country where air conditioning is not necessarily a given. And so obviously the neighborhoods that don't have the trees, you know, it's a problem. So we're building, we're growing trees, we're putting trees into these neighborhoods that need that shade equity. And then finally, we've put some real barriers, I think, on the developer side. So when the developers come into the city of Portland, we require a community benefit. And so here's a couple of examples. We've had the Albina neighborhood, the Rockwood neighborhood. These are highly diverse areas. Rockwood, I think they speak over 27 different languages in that part of the city. We've got community gardens, we've got community food hubs, you know, as a requirement in those development areas. So it'll be interesting to see as this Albina neighborhood takes form. They've got community gardens slated. We'll see how that comes along.
Atlanta.
All right, all right, all right. By show of hands, who in here is from Detroit? All right, what up, though? All right. by show of hands, who in here is from the South? Hey, what's happening, y'all? And for everybody else, hello, how are you doing? My name is Jay Olu-Baiwu. I am the Urban Agriculture and Food Systems Director for the City of Atlanta. I've been in, right up, what's up, what's up? I've been in my role, it'll be 4 years in November. I've been in kind of urban agriculture and food systems work for about 14 years. And before that, I worked in restaurant and hospitality. So I've been in food for, I guess, probably over 2 decades at this point. You know, there's a couple of things on here. Yeah, we're a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Food Policy Advisors Group, USDN Urban Agriculture Directors Network, Southeast Sustainability Directors Network, and SWAG Growers Cooperative, which is the Southwest Atlanta Growers Cooperative. Yeah, I'm a board member on a couple different things. Georgia Composting Council, which is a part of the U.S. Composting Council. So if anybody is familiar with that, some places have state chapters. We just established ours in Georgia in the past 10 months or so. So I'm a board member of that. And then also, I'm a board member on an organization called Sustainable Agriculture and Food System Funders. I'm one of 2 non-member board members. So basically, that is an organization with a lot of philanthropy on it. So you've got Kellogg Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, a bunch of family foundations, the list goes on, Kresge, et cetera, et cetera. I basically went to a conference, I said a couple of things, they asked me to be on the planning committee, I said a couple more things, they asked me to be on the board. So that's how it works, but it gives me a unique lens because I'm able to be there as somebody who's not necessarily a funder in a philanthropic way, but who does have experience in that way. I came into this as a farmer's market vendor, then I trained for 6 months as a farmer. I was a farmer for 2.5, 3 years, and then over the years I become an administrator. So I think I'm able to bring a certain perspective, this kind of like real world perspective, but also recognizing that some of the things that I did 10 years ago, there's like more innovative things happening now. Yeah, real quick, I touched on it a little bit before municipal work. I've been a funder, farmers market garden CSA leader, farm and farm sales manager, restaurant and hospitality. When I started training as a farmer, I was really impressed with cabbage, right? Like cabbage, the way it grows and that it looks like a fist. So I do want a cabbage tattoo. I'm Nigerian, British, Southeastern, Northern American. Both of my parents are Nigerian. I was born in London. I grew up in Athens, Georgia. And people are my passion. Food is the conduit. Yeah. So I didn't say this, but so, you know, we're all in unique offices and departments. I'm actually a part of the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Resilience. When it comes to the food work, the urban ag work, the food systems work, we kind of birthed it in some ways from our office. Department of City Planning is a big partner in it, and they definitely have a much larger budget and are able to execute some programs in a very effective way. And I mean, I think our first city demonstration of urban ag work goes back to 2007 with the Parks Department. The Parks Department formed an MOU with a nonprofit called Park Pride. They collaborate on about 21 community gardens within City of Atlanta parks. They still have that contract, and we're actually working on kind of, not renegotiating, but kind of realigning and evolving that partnership. A couple of images here, we call it the 5 Ps, plans, policies, projects, programs, and partnerships. I'll just touch on a couple of those, but there's just a couple of things here showing you like we're out there. We do some reporting, Fresh Food Access Report. The urban food forest of Browns Mill is the largest public food forest in the country. I think it's by 0.1 of an acre, it's 7.1 acres. So yeah, we had some open houses, things of that nature, and there's like a panel of other pictures. Ash and I have done presentations together, so I copied her little finger there for aglanta.org, but yeah, you can go to aglanta.org or .com, and you will find different things about us. And just real quick, showing you kind of how we operate with the 5 Ps. So we do plans. You've got the Fresh Food Access Report. We're actually working on urban agriculture and food systems planning. Even though our first urban ag director came in 2015, I'm the second urban ag director, we actually do not have a city urban ag or food systems plan. So that's something that's really, really critical, really important. We're working on that. We're also in the middle of zoning rewrites and all of that stuff. We're a B city, so shout out to the Xerxes Foundation and Stephanie Steele, who's here in Detroit. We're definitely part of the B City initiative. Composting is a big deal. We're grateful to receive a USDA compost food waste reduction grant. So we're working on some things there. And with partnerships, Really, really important. We have steering committees for some of our programs. We have interagency collaborations and partnerships, and then also like the inside-outside strategy with people in the community that sometimes are official partnerships, and sometimes it's just kind of like, let's grab a bite to eat and talk. So, yeah, glad to be here.
All right now. All right now. So we wanted to give you a deep dive to meet the beautiful people that are doing this work in various cities. But I do have some questions. All right, so let's go. And I will open it up to questions from you guys too as well. But first, mine. All right, so, I'm listening to you all, and I know that this is true in Detroit. We talked about urban ag really starting off as a grassroots movement and moving up to cities, and it sounds like very similar in all of you cities. How do you balance that? How do you balance the grassroots movement of what ag is with city government?
Sure.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start since I have the mic. So, so as I said, Atlanta, Georgia, of course, southeastern United States, world's busiest airport and all those things. But before all of that, the South is known for agriculture, right? There's some beautiful things about that history. There are definitely some horrific things about that history, but we are known for agriculture. So before Atlanta became the Atlanta of today, there were two things that were really booming in Atlanta. It was called Terminus, because a lot of railroad tracks, a lot of railroad lines come through there, and then also for agriculture. So we know that agriculture predates what we have in the city of Atlanta as far as our municipality, things of that nature. I think for me personally, my story, because I started off with my hands in the soil, I knew quite a few people in the urban agriculture space when I was a young farmer, right? Or a new farmer, as they say. So as my career has progressed, I've continued to stay connected to folks. I still grow food at home, things of that nature. So I think when I walk into a room, for the most part, at least the folks that at least know a little bit about my history, I'm not looked at as an outsider. I'm also very intentional to, give a shout out to Habisha, give a shout out to Truly Living Well, give a shout out to the nonprofit organizations, give a shout out to the aunties and uncles in the community who've been growing food in their backyards, sometimes for necessity, sometimes as a hobby for health and wellness, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just very intentional in calling out the ancestors and the people who have laid the legacy for us now. We also try to have very clear meetings with folks. We connect with organizations that are doing it, whether it's a neighborhood group, a civic association, et cetera, et cetera. And then we bring our city of Atlanta kind of, municipal lens to it. So it's definitely about honoring folks who've been doing the work, uplifting them, and then ideally being able to offer some new resources to take it to the next level.
Yeah, that's so important, so important. Anybody else want to talk about how they balance this grassroots movement with city government?
Yeah, 1,000%. I would say that we also in Philly have a really strong inside-outside approach. If you don't know what that means, just really quickly, it literally just means the folks on the inside, whether you call it the ivory tower, the ops, whatever you want to call the inside. The outside is the folks who are not a part of those social circles. They don't have that same social capital. So when you get an opportunity to be on the inside and you're not sort of leaving your history, your communities, your training, your understanding of what people need, is when you walk through the door, you're not just leaving it outside, you're bringing it inside with you. You just inherently have to become an advocate. And so when you become a public servant, in my mind, my whole family's public servants. My dad, God rest his spirit, was a public servant. He also worked at Parks and Rec, and before that, he was a meteorologist with the government, with the Air Force. My mom's a nurse. My twin Sibby, who's here, works for the feds doing natural disaster recovery. All public servants, we have a mission. We're here to serve. And so, unfortunately, a lot of our public servants do not have that same mission.
Say that. Say that. Say that.
But guess what? So the cool thing about Inside Outside that I realized is that I just come as my authentic self. I think J. Olu's echoing that as well. And the main thing, tell the truth. Toni Morrison, before she passed, yes, just Toni Morrison, also bless her spirit and all the joy and incredible things she contributed to this world. Toni Morrison had this beautiful speech about telling the truth. And when you're in these positions of somewhat power, and I'm not just talking about being on the inside, because when you're in the grassroots, you're powerful too, right? if not more powerful. It's just because we're not as always organized why we're not more powerful than the people in the ivory tower. But virtually, you tell the truth. When we sit in a room full of people who are demanding more for their communities, as civil servants, we have to understand that everything that these communities are going through has been by design. I tell you, if you open any book, and I have a long list of books, it will tell you the truth about what has happened to all of our cities, all of your cities, and why we are faced with climate catastrophe, climate crisis. So when I walk into a room of people, I tell them the truth. I don't know how to answer that question, but I'm gonna find out for you. Or actually, this is exactly what's happening right now in this room, these locked, closed doors. And people appreciate that, right? Inside-outside approach is necessary. We have to be able to connect the folks who are doing the policy making and the strategic planning and the program making with the folks who are directly and most impacted. That's the only way that some of this is even gonna work, where the grassroots folks are still being celebrated to this day. And so I think I'll end with that, but virtually just whatever positions that you all have, how can you leverage your position for the communities that you work in and serve?
All right, now. Deanna want to say? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, there's not much to add, but that was really, it resonates with me, especially being new to the city, because that inside-outside approach is very needed, and it can be a challenge. That's why I was like, give it up for the truth, because it can be a challenge being on the inside and coming from a grassroots experience where you know that the most impacted have the answers and know what the solutions can and should be, but we know are purposely divested from resources and the infrastructure to really do what they need to do. And what I learned early on in the role was there's still a disconnect in the city, even though we have this long history. We have these silos in our agencies and our mayor offices, and the different and disparities around power and influence, and how one wants to meet a mandate. But a lot of folks forget that we are civil servants. And not civil servants to push paper, and not civil servants to just clock in and out at 9 to 5, but we're supposed to be here for the people. So early on, when people, 2 days in the job, were like, well, what's New York City's urban ag plan? I just got the job. And it was like, I can tell you exactly what I heard and seen from the grassroots experience. But what I did realize is I needed to understand a little bit more on the inside and how to leverage the folks on the ground, how to leverage the voice, and how to move that system. It's a work in progress. But what I started telling people before I really had a plan was it needs to be what's good for New York, and it needs to be what's good for New Yorkers. And that's something that even now on a daily basis, when you have to be challenged on the inside on how to continue to center community, how to center best practices, how to center what is needed, I try to go back to that. So it's like I can have initiatives and I can have strategies, but it has to be good for New York, and it has to be good for New Yorkers. And for New York, I think about New York City and New York. So not just the 5 boroughs that make our city, but our relationship with the land and with our regional land and regional partners. Upstate in New York, which is very different urban-wise, and also in our larger region. Because we have a lot of vibrant urban ag activity in the city, but if we don't have strong, genuine connections with our partners in the rest of our state, in other urban cities, or in our rural partners, we're not gonna survive in New York City. Our water supply is reliant on our rural partners and stewards on that land for when it comes down to the city, and how we use it on our community gardens and urban farms. So, I think, to me, when it came down to the work, or what continues to be about the work, is how is there a way to move a city like New York that sees climate in one unique way, that might right now see food in a different way, but we need urban agriculture to be that nature-based solution that's climate smart and resilient. and our community members, our stakeholders, and what people understand from students to elders and how they engage and are a part of that, and they should see themselves in the work. That's really how to like move it, I think, in a city like ours, where it's still kind of siloed, is people need to see the work is already happening, but there are ways that we could be scaling it, and that is what we should be moving our infrastructure. That's where some of the money and resources and technical assistance should be, is getting opportunities to folks that are most impacted to be the ones that inform the policy. And my office is just a conduit to that.
All right, now, okay. First of all, we got respect the wisdom of the people who came before us, the inside-outside game, and centering community. So thank you for those. You brought up a good point about collaboration across departments, city, state, federal. Can you talk about that, Case? You want to talk about that and how that impacts your work, and how do you go about doing that?
Sure. So collaboration, we can't do this. I don't think there's anyone in this room that would disagree that we can't do this work without deep, authentic collaboration where we speak our truth. And I think to tie a little bit into the inside-outside game with that too, I would say, at least in the county of Santa Clara, where I live and work, and through the food system work plan, which I have the honor of being able to steward forward, we call out some pretty specific strategies for collaboration that include both I'm going to start with the most important, our Resident Advisory Council, which is fairly new, just getting going, where we are partnering with a nonprofit organization to lead that effort. So it's not a county, it doesn't sit with the county. The county helps to flow and provide funding for a nonprofit organization to work in close collaboration with residents from across our county who will, in a future iteration of it, be able to let go of that nonprofit and steward their work forward to set the priorities that then the county, myself, and a future team, I hope, move forward. So we have the collaboration of our Resident Advocacy Council. There is also the future vision of a leadership collaborative, which would be more focused on nonprofit organizations, some of our city staff across the 15 cities, hopefully not just creating another meeting for everybody to go to, but really valuing that constellation of food system, urban ag being one of them, economic empowerment organizations, workforce development, the list goes on, charitable food distribution organizations, but really honoring that constellation of talent and history that exists in Santa Clara County to come together as a collaborative. And then third, we call out a kitchen cabinet, and that is where I'm going to go with this inside-outside piece, which is the county itself. And what I want to focus on is getting our own house in order to be able to receive the wisdom of our community. Because what I find, and I'm new, coming over from the nonprofit sector, but we are siloed, yes, and I guess that's not super surprising, but we also have a tendency to want to then just kind of attach to those, amazing nonprofits or, local residents and then impose our idea of what's next. And I think what I really want to spend some time on is understanding from across our procurement, public health, housing, Office of Sustainability, I could go on here, right? All of these parks and rec departments within the county, what is your understanding of a food system, a strong, resilient food system? What is your understanding of our relationship with our community nonprofits that have been doing this work for much longer than we've been recognizing it? And when and how can we be ready then to be good partners, to actually be stewards of that relationship? So I think when I think about collaboration, I think about how we really are doing the deep, intentional work of preparing for authentic collaboration in our community. So I'll stop there. That's what I'll add.
Thanks, Case. Amanda, you want to add to that, or how do you feel?
Yeah, just a simple thought on that. I think that I was talking to some folks earlier, and it's really about that coalition building. It kind of gets back to the grassroots, but it's very hard for these politicians, these different agencies, the different sections of that to, keep everything straight, much less definitions. And I think, what I've seen success, work in that is when you do come together with a common message. You may not have everything in common, but if you can agree on 2 or 3 things that are priorities and put that in front of it and be deliberate and intentional about it, you'll have a better chance of getting your voice heard. We've seen that in Portland, where we've got a lot of different groups, all wanting different things or similar things. And what's challenging is that, there's such a scarcity of funding that these organizations end up, competitive with one another. And then, the governments see that and they're like, well, what's going on here? They seem to be competing with one another when really we need to be coming together around common goals.
All right.
You want?
Go for it.
You're
the OG, Ash. You can do. You can do whatever you. No. 5 years in, yes, you can do whatever you want.
Driving me out. I feel. I just wanted to say that I felt inspired by what both of you said, and it just made me think about how when there's not collaboration, then the process just becomes extractive. Then it becomes exploitive.
Always.
If the people who are not most impacted are not put in the center, and really in the center, forms of leadership, getting paid for the work that they're doing, right? Because it's not always volunteerism, et cetera. Then it becomes extractive and exploitive. It means we're going into their communities, asking them to literally show up to our meetings, extract all the ideas and all the things we want, and then we just show up whenever we're ready to say, oh, we only really pushed one thing, right? Or we didn't have any money to push any of those items that you guys identified. Does that resonate with anyone here? I'm sure all of us have literally been in those meetings, right?
Yep.
So just no more of that. That is something for me where I'm just like, that is front and center in the work. So I just wanted to share one solid example. When we did our urban agriculture plan, we looked at how we're going to have all these people in the room. First of all, the person in power at the time told us we could only invite something like 25 people. And we said, absolutely not. 25 people is like one organization would show up, right? So what we did was we ended up inviting like at least 80 people. Not everybody shows up, right? But we split the invites into 3 parts. One part is city agency, one part is nonprofit and institutions, and one part is actually the people doing the work, right? So the farmers, the gardeners, the growers, these are the actual policy experts. The reason why we did 3 parts is because when we would have some meetings, guess who would overwhelmingly show up? The city people. Some of them have no business being in the room. They would just show up and take up so much space, grandstand the meetings, and guess who else does that? The nonprofits. No offense to the nonprofits in the room. I used to work for a nonprofit, so this is just the culture, right? Because as nonprofits, we just take up so much space. As city agencies, we think we're the experts, and so we put ourselves in the front. No more of that. So you have equal parts. You're not going to have more city agency than you are going to have the actual people doing the work. So that's just one example of how you can tweak a process to make sure that you're instilling, is this extractive or is it collaborative, right? Is this supporting and amplifying the voices who have been speaking for generations, or is this exploiting them? And you just keep asking yourself those questions every step of the way when you're formalizing your process for a new program or a plan in your city or whatever have you.
All right. Thank you so much. I got a new catchphrase, no more of that. I'm going to be saying that. You're going to come up to me, I'm just saying, no more of that. No more of that. So here in Detroit, land access has been a big issue for us. Prior to the formation of the Detroit Land Bank Authority, land was owned by multiple entities in Detroit, and it was really hard to catch land. And even now that most residential property has been consolidated under the land bank, it still can be a 2, 3, 4 year process. If you went to Oakland Ave, she may have told you the story. It took 15 years to purchase the land that she was already growing on. And this is, I mentioned the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund because we had people here growing on property that they didn't own. And then they couldn't figure out how to own it. And nor did they even have, the wherewithal to say, like, could I own this? It didn't even cross my mind. And I talk as one of the people who was a community gardener who didn't even think about, owning the property that I was living down the street from, caring from, stewarding, right? And so, I want to know, what is that like? What is that like in your cities? What are you seeing? Are we seeing land ownership, land trusts? What are the mechanisms that people are using to acquire property for farming in your cities? Cases like,
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're not. Yeah. I think I'm going to address that directly, and I want to tell a very quick story. So that's top of mind for me right now. So Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County, San Jose is completely out of reach for anyone to purchase just about anything related to land. Most residents, I think our average, median home price right now is $1.5 million, median. So when we're talking about the idea of urban ag and owning land for urban ag, I think we have some root cause issues that are deep and intractable. We have an affordability crisis with regard to housing, cost of living. So these things are probably things you're all very familiar with from national news. So what I will say is I'm very focused in bridging with cities from the county's perspective, finding and strengthening ways to support urban ag through our own public land and access to public land. So both the county has a strong parks partnership program through our Parks and Rec department. We have not translated into 6 languages. That's Wednesday. I'll start on that. But we have an online, process. Could be more accessible. Been here since December. That's something I'm definitely going to get on. So the county has a process. City of San Jose, other cities across the county that I know of don't necessarily have a process, but do have precedents for some really long-standing, even lease agreements with all the protections of a lease in the state of California for nonprofits and urban ag operators. But one thing I just want to highlight this very quickly, and it goes back to that inside-outside game again, is, last night I received news directly from a community member about another community member whose home, her name is Cynthia, was destroyed last night in a fire. And I was on the phone during a reception because this community member called me, this is real, thinking I might want to go out, didn't know I was in Detroit, with her to help look for this community member's cats. Because I love cats. I'm a childless cat lady. And so I was like, you know what, Bertha, I would, but I'm in Detroit. But send me the list of everything else that she needs to, and I'm going to ask my husband to put that stuff, including the cat carriers, on the front porch. And then anyway, so then this whole flood of there's a GoFundMe, there's whatever. So this is what I know from being on, in community about how mutual support, what it looks like, right? For someone who Cynthia is an urban ag warrior in our community. She also is a mom. She's a sister. She has gone out during COVID and door knocked, about vaccines. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because, so that's what I know from community and the way that community will immediately come in and around someone. And so what I want to know is then, when I'm in that kitchen cabinet meeting, the county, does our county understand that program she was participating in, Juntos, which is a parks prescription program, that's our parks department. When she was knocking doors, that was from funding from our public health department, right? When she was a caterer, because she's part of a local food cooperative, she was catering at our supervisors, one of our supervisors' women's summit. She is, as an urban ag champion, in the fabric of our county. And I'm ending with, what will happen to that property where she and multiple families live together in one house? I'm going to guess it's going to get sold and it's going to be developed and it won't be affordable anymore. And so the importance of really raising up the integration of of urban ag into our housing policies, into our transportation, into land use and planning is, I can't think of anything more important than it. So it is the urban ag itself, but that understanding, that deep understanding of how it interconnects is what's going to, in the end, allow us as a county to really stand with our community and build that mutual support to keep people in urban ag and in our county. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's a really important story. I'm not sure. I wanted to share a little bit about New York and our, and it might be different for other cities too. You know, we do have this history of the majority of the community garden and green space that folks are growing on in the city to be under our Green Thumb program and contracts, license agreements in particular. The reality is for them, and it's been so for 30 plus years, there have been changes in the agreements, but many of the stakeholders still find the agreements that they have through Green Thumb and Parks to be limiting in terms of the work and scale of food producing that they want to do. They're not able to create job or workforce opportunities. It's rooted in volunteerism and sweat equity. And while that is great and needed for community work to continue to grow, it does cap people who want to, you know, utilize their land to scale for genuine food justice as opposed to just food security for our immediate community, or creating economic opportunities for folks so they can do it while they go to school or do it part-time, or do it full-time. It creates this unintentional or maybe intentional disconnect where it keeps land stewards in a place of just focusing on land that they're never going to be able to own. And for the folks that want to grow more or to scale up or do other climate resilient work like stormwater mitigation or connecting different models, we as a city have hit a wall or a gap or cap, if you will, with just those kind of license agreements. So even though those agreements have been extended from 3 years to 10 years, again, you're now in a tenure that you're just in this very particular stewardship. And to me, I think those are spaces that still need to be protected and they still need to grow. But as a city of New York, where we have such need of housing and food and climate need, we need to, and the majority of underutilized land really being under city property or in private, and I don't know if folks know that New York's very expensive. To me, one of the opportunities is looking at underutilized land in our public inventory where folks haven't had the lens of urban agriculture. Most of the cities that have a purview or portfolio of land, they have a mandate that's very different. So a DOE, a Department of Education mandate, and when they look at land is very different in terms of what, say, Department of Environmental Protection would look at land or transportation. We right now as a city haven't had the opportunity to really explore, what is the genuine inventory of land with a new lens, a fresh criteria that is relevant to urban agriculture, land use activity? Can we create new agreements or lease agreements that would create more opportunities on land access that's within the city purview, but also new activities that would then be legal to be done? So can we have folks that are able to build land trusts or other, for-profit business or business activity that you're able to create a profit? So I should take a step back. In those license agreements that most of our folks are growing on, they're able to create revenue. They can have a farmer's market, they can grow food, they can sell their honey, but that money has to go back into the garden. So again, when I say you are not able to pay for labor, that's part of why. You're not able to make a profit, but you can generate revenue. So what that has identified for the office is that we need new agreements that are relevant to where community stakeholders are at now, where the folks want to scale production and still do it for community benefit. But we need agreements that are relevant to support activity like that. We also need land agreements that agencies would then be encouraged to utilize their land in ways to incorporate more urban ag activity in it. So not just think of them as community gardens, but think of all the other practices, models that could be done in this underutilized land, whether it's indoor agriculture or soil-based work, if it's solar and, solar and food production, if it's a place for storage, so folks are able to build value-added products or create, just have more infrastructure, more access to water. So for us, for the city, to me, it's exploring and being relevant about what we need right now in the face of climate change, but also the reality of when opportunities that come where are rooted in new contracts or new agreements, oftentimes the folks that need those agreements are not at the table to inform what they look like. And agencies tend to not really talk to partners or have the real relationships to talk to them. So you can create programs that miss those connections. So what we've been trying to do is identify not just where the land is, but demonstrate that there is a need for new agreements, license agreements that acknowledge that you're now trying to incorporate land for different scaled models, different scaled practices, that we need the opportunity for folks to be able to do this work and be in solidarity with each other. So it may no longer just be under one unincorporated group of volunteers, but are we creating land opportunities and agreement opportunities so folks can come in together and say, like, we're a cooperative now and we want to be eligible for these agreements and these land use activities? Are we a small business now and we want to bring this work? Or even contractors. Some of the procurement work that we try to do right now, since that's no longer work around land and license agreements, is trying to show folks that are practitioners in the work, there might be contracts or opportunities that you're eligible for, but if you're not in a structure like an LLC, sole proprietor, you're now not able to really demonstrate the work of your operations or qualify for certain loans or grants. That doesn't just have city implications, that has state implications, that has federal implications, because now you're not able to get a farm number or apply for a loan, or even thinking about liabilities. These are some of the nuance that, as a city that is so adamant about green space, we haven't really thought about how to empower the people who grow in these green spaces, but also that these are folks that deserve to be able to build businesses or profit generating so they can be sustainable in that model. And we can't just rely on folks to do food security work in our community gardens and not give them adequate access to resources. And that there might be new ways that we need to explore relationships at the state level or Fed level, where then we're thinking about how do we make the changes in our agreements that will make it easier for folks to apply and be eligible for larger grants, to buy land or even get loans to build their businesses. Think about liability another way. Oftentimes, some of the grants and programs that people can apply to, not only do you have to demonstrate 1 to 5 years of operation or more, you also have to be able to have the burden of that liability. If you're still in a structure or by yourself, it's really hard for a lot of folks to say, I know how to grow or tend to this land, but I'm not going to be able to handle that liability. And we see that oftentimes too, and I'm sure folks see that as well, even in community-driven models like CSAs or farmers markets, folks that are on different properties, you get hit with that liability insurance, and there's no real collective purchasing way to manage it, or you're trying to do it on your own. So for us, it's not just, it's finding a way to try to explore the land opportunities, but also the agreements are going to be built in a way that's not going to be a barrier moving forward.
Okay, I see you got some work ahead of you to do. Yeah, I got some work. Okay, does that mic work right there? Okay, so I know. I think if there's a volunteer who wants to take questions around, Amanda or Jay, did you have anything to say? And then if folks have questions in the crowd, you can head to that mic. But I feel like I saw you like, I want to say something. One of you said, no? Okay, about the land tenure piece. Because we heard from New York and California where prices are way up here. Detroit is in a different position. And what about Atlanta? What about Portland? What's happening? I saw one vacant lot in Philly for 10K plus, so yeah, okay. More than that now. Maybe, okay, that was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I'll be brief on mine. I think so. For those who know, Atlanta is referred to as a developer city. Atlanta loves to knock something down to build something back up, right? And it's really offensive at times because we even do that with like historic buildings, cultural spaces, et cetera, et cetera. So Atlanta has gotten more and more expensive. I think we are in the top 5 of fastest growing metro areas in the country. The cost of property is going up, up, up. I know these are not just unique things to Atlanta. They're happening in a lot of different places. So I can't remember who said it, but trying to utilize public land for growing and urban agriculture, I think that's one of the strongest things you can do. I think what's really important is you got to realize your own landscape wherever you are, right? So for example, like you said in Detroit, where there's still a land bank program, which for us, from coming outside of Detroit, we think it's kind of modestly priced. So that's really amazing. Whereas in Atlanta, we don't have that same infrastructure. So, we do have a grows a lot adoption program with 5-year leases or license agreements. Excuse me, it's not a lease, it's a license agreement. We're constantly advocating for more public lands to be dedicated to urban agriculture and food systems. We're just trying to leverage as much public property, underutilized, vacant property as much as possible. But again, I think what's most important is you got to look at your own landscape because every city is different, every municipality is different. Work with what you got, and then also push for more. But I think sometimes people miss the work with what you got part. Work with what you got and push for more, because if you're just pushing and pushing and not working with what you have, you can miss it. There's organizations now trying to build a farm in an old affordable housing community in Atlanta. The cost of building that farm now versus when I told them to do that 7 years ago is a lot higher now. So work with what you got and then go from there.
All right. Okay, we're going to make it quick. I think we have 15 minutes, so maybe 30 seconds. Questions?
Start my timer. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Princess, and I'm a farmer in Philly and a steward of Lenape land. Thank you guys for lending your wisdom to the space. And I just got a question because not too many people raised their hands, Ash, when you asked if they had an urban ag plan for their respective cities. So what are some tips, how they can get that going in an official plan? Because that content, what's the word, y'all? Continuity? Yeah. Being able to keep going after you've dedicated your time is of utmost importance. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what's up, Princess. And anyone else can answer. Does anyone else want to answer?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So real fast, how to get a plan for your city. It's definitely going to look different for everybody in this room. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. What worked in Philly may or may not work for you. The way that we got our plan in Philly is a long saga and pretty funny, but in a nutshell, the city of Philadelphia didn't come up with this on their own. They didn't even come up with hiring an urban ag director on their own. The advocates, again, inside-outside approach, collaboration. The advocates in Philly, which we have different groups in all across the city. We also have a really strong and powerful food policy council, the Philadelphia Food Policy Advisory Council. We worked in an urban ag subcommittee, and we had a hearing for urban ag in 2016, and city council members clapping, this is so fantastic, you guys are so fantastic, everything's great. 3 years went by, nothing changed. We didn't get any new water regs, we didn't get any better process to land, so we talked about license and lease agreements. We have them, do they go out to people, is a huge question, right? So nothing changed politically. So then a lot of us, including myself, organized to then start going inside and outside, pushing for an urban agriculture plan, so much so that we use the Food Policy Council as the platform to make the application to a foundation, a local foundation. That foundation funded the plan. So then we looked around and said, well, who's going to lead the plan, right? That's where the director position comes about. But where should the director position be placed? Because that's really important. It could be in the Office of Sustainability. It could be in the Office of our Department of Health. Why Parks and Rec, right? Parks and Rec, after some advocacy and also encouragement, decided that it wanted to be the leader in this space on the municipal side. So then they put the application out, and someone from our community, i.e. myself, applied and got the job. You see what I'm saying? So it really does, you have to kind of look at the whole trajectory. Where do we start? And of course the work doesn't end, but where do we start and how do we hit those points, right? You don't just show up and ask for an urban ag plan. You gotta kind of do this sort of background work. Who's gonna lead it? Who's gonna steward it? Who's gonna be on the committee? How are we gonna implement it afterwards? Where's the money for that? So then we go back to that same foundation who gave us the money to do it and said, give us money to implement it now, right? So it's like, it's all about strategy. That's how you implement a plan and get that across in your own city. Hopefully that's helpful, y'all. And we also put land in the center of our food systems plan. So if you look at any traditional food systems diagram, land's never in it. So we decided to put land right in the center, and we added another level of food system, which is the people who hold the work, is a ring around the food system. So we added 2 extra chapters or platforms in the food system for Philadelphia. You might want to consider that too, or add a different sector that's important to you. But land security is the #1 issue for growers in Philadelphia, so land had to be the center. It's the first chapter in our plan.
Okay, next year, y'all better raise some more hands. Who got a plan? Can I offer?
I totally echo what Ash said, and especially within like a municipal plan and engaging with advocates for sure. I think in thinking about taking a step out of the city, I think if there are cities or counties that are still interested in building a strategic plan, one thing I would suggest to continue to explore is the relationships that your existing offices or folks in government roles have, and also think about some of our federal agencies and partners that are starting to get more out in our cities and counties. So I'm thinking like Farm Service Agency and urban ag directors in counties in particular. Many of our urban cities either have new committees or starting to have them, and I think that these are partners that could be really helpful in terms of how to help build some of that advocacy, how to help build, and especially spaces that may not have that traction or anchor of an office or an urban ag director, but thinking about ways to coalesce around what is needed. Kind of like what Ash was saying, like land security, putting that first, the opportunities around funding and grants. These are some of the ways that we can connect with FSA partners, other federal partners, and I think meeting folks on the ground, and I think about some of the board representations that we have in New York City. If I was starting from scratch 2 years ago, they would have been some of the first folks I reached out to.
All right, all right. Okay, we'll take another question.
Yes, hi, I'm Jennifer Trice, and I'm from University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and Princess, thank you, I'm gonna jump off of that. Just to give all of us more work to do. Do we have any algorithms in your plans? And what I mean by that is, how many square feet does each of your city have? And how many square feet, if it was perfectly grown, what are you growing? How many people does it feed? Where is the storage? Where is the distribution? Does it go to the school? How does it, fit into businesses? I know that's a lot to process, but we do have some tech people here. And I was just thinking, that helps us plan on a very unsexy level with numbers. How much does New York City have right now, in underutilized space, but beyond the land, can we get into buildings? And that to me, at least for me, is really sexy, interesting, powerful information where we know how many people we can employ, how much should things cost. And that gives us so much leverage, and I would love to work with anybody and anyone that's in here, but do you have anything in your plan utilizing those numbers going forward?
Yeah, that's a good, is that a question for me directly?
Oh, we talked yesterday.
We talked, I just want to make sure. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But that's to everybody up here, because
Okay.
you're all having the same plans of a limited amount of space. And so what is it that these really creative, amazing people can do and grow in that space?
Oh, sure. No, thank you. I mean, I'll answer it for me, and then I want to make sure I have space and time for other folks to answer. I mean, the reality for my plan is we're an office that's 1.5 years, and we get 0 city funding to do the work that we're doing. That said, I found ways to try to continue to leverage state and federal funding to do some of our base work. So the first report came out, we didn't have really, we had measures that we were trying to reach, because I was really pressed to figure out how I was going to build data or how to compile data in urban ag, because it's really hard to do that and get comprehensive data. And also the realities of not getting supported to find that data. So for me, it was like in the last year and a half, how do I actually identify how important and critical urban ag data is in New York City, how to find tools that are going to be practical for stakeholders to actually use, and to find a way to make this sustainable enough that the city, or leverage other existing data sets that the city would actually use and see. So the short answer is, in this next coming year, with our new metrics of progress report, what I'm trying to find ways is how to use existing data to tell that story from really the baseline that we started from year one, but how to realistically build in algorithms or tools and measures when we don't have that funding, because it's a chicken or the egg, for lack of a better term, on knowing that there's a need for comprehensive urban ag data, but not being resourced to gather it. And I'm sure other urban ag cities that are trying to get that data struggle with that too. But where I want to start is where everything should start, is with the community. And so it's been doing the homework on, for me, honestly, it's not so much the square footage of a building, because if Department of Building isn't going to engage on a program, it's not going to matter. But it's been, how can I inform what is needed in a way that they'll listen, Department of Building, Transportation, but really think about what is the need of community and how to demonstrate the work that's already happening, how to quantify the bounty and the yield that's here in the city and what we could do more of, and how does that inform the initiatives that the city has. So it's a work in progress in terms of how to find a way to define urban ag in a city that's relevant for community, and building tools and approaches that people are going to want to trust and engage with first before I can say this is how it is.
Yes, and I think trust. So we talk about tools, and in Silicon Valley we have a lot of tools. We have no end to the number of technological tools and methods, I think, for examining algorithms. One thing I wanted to say is that I feel that my position, which is in the Office of the County Executive, which is great for visibility, great for for credibility, great for being near where certain kinds of decisions are made, it also does not make it easy in many cases to show up and ask for even departments within the county, much less nonprofits, even though I was working alongside many of them, and ask or suggest, hey, let's all go out and start sharing data, and let's all, don't worry, we'll help build this system, and here's how we can all input data. So I think I'm really focused on trust building, on relationship building, and taking the time that's necessary before I really start to focus on conversations about tools to share data. And I think that, and that data is very powerful, that is true, but without those relationships, we won't find that. And I think that there has been so much, there has not been an acknowledgement of the urban ag and food systems work that's been done, and it has resulted in a lot of organizations really turning on either each other, turning on local government, instead of all of us turning toward something together. And so I think, tools when that time is right, and in the meantime, trust.
All right. All right. All right, I'm going to take one more question. We also have one online. And only because it's Miss Betty Wiggins up there. Go ahead.
First, thank you very much, and I'll do my disclaimer. I'm a native Detroiter and very proud of it. Been transplanted to Houston, Texas, and very proud of that as well. What I have to say to all of you people, and not in a pejorative kind of way, is that I see all these municipalities up here, mayor's office. Do you know who the second largest owner of available property is in your area? It's the schools. Why aren't there some Board of Education presidents up there? Because they make policies. I opened up 84 school gardens here in Detroit, never paid one water bill. All I had to do was go to the school board. please ensure that urban agriculture invite the schools to the table, just like they did in the Food Policy Council in Detroit. I was invited to the table, and we grew as a collaboration. So my question is, in your schools, do you have a K-12 representative? Because one of the greatest potential buyers for your urban agriculturalists are institutional buyers, people like me. I serve on a committee called Growing Justice, and one of the things we're doing is offering grants to BIPOC people of color to give them the capacity to enter into the institutional markets. Because I'm in Houston now, I buy $63 million worth of food. I'm not looking for a one-time hit. I'm looking for a 1, 2, 3-year contractor to buy for me. In order for urban agriculture to really impact your local economy, you gotta have some institutional buyers. It's nice to have farmers markets. You need institutional buyers, 1, 2, 3-year contract. So that's more of a statement, and for people to know that farm to school ain't nothing just a little cute idea with first or second graders. It is really an economic engine that can support urban agriculture. So I want to thank you.
Okay, you see why I gave her the last question. That's Miss Betty Wiggins, who was in the Office of School Nutrition here in Detroit for so long and did so much good work. And, you know, in conjunction with what she said, we did have a question online that says, how important is teaching the youth about the many avenues? And so this really ties into what Ms. Wiggins is saying there, just noting that ag is not just about farming, urban ag. It's the largest industry in the United States. So Ms. Wiggins brought up the economy. Jay Olu, I want to leave it with you to answer this question about the future, the youth, working with schools. What do you think?
You know, I know it sounds cliche, but of course the children are the future, so yes, thumbs up on all of that, as Ms. Betty said. So we have the Atlanta Public Schools Department. Atlanta Public Schools is not operated underneath the leadership of the mayor. It's its own entity, and just like the Housing Authority is also its own entity. So there are some different kind of leadership structures there. All of the schools in the city of Atlanta are eligible to have farms and gardens at their site, so that's a thumbs up. What I have found from experience is you have some folks like Miss Betty who have been, and I think Detroit is ahead of it. I went to Drew Farm yesterday. I thought it was amazing, and had a vision of that. Is actually want to apply for a USDA grant. But I think sometimes you have people in communities who are already into work. Sometimes they're parents, sometimes they're advocates. But then there are also some other schools that are under-resourced. The teachers are already tired, they're stressed. There's the summertime, what do you do? So we've been working on, working with some nonprofit organizations, working from our municipal space to work more closely with the schools and create some new collaborations, basically. So I'm a huge advocate for it. We actually have been applying for some roles to be able to help facilitate some school gardens. We do have quite a few of them. I think it's great, and also I think it's something you have to look at in your individual municipal space, because there's just some different kind of things that go with that. One more thing I'll say about it is Atlanta Public Schools, they're updating their food and wellness policy. My understanding is all school districts do this every 3 to 5 years or something like that. So that's a great opportunity. We're in the process of that, and we're really uplifting gardens and farms at schools right now and adding that into the APS food and wellness policy, which would then ideally open up the door for some more resources and funding so we can really elevate and uplift more school gardens and things of that nature. So huge advocate for it. I think it's where the future needs to be, and it's just another one of the things. It's like a both and situation. It's like we need schools, we need K to grade, we need elders, we need young farmers, we need all the things, but schools are a great place for sure.
All right, and that was a great place to wrap up. The person who had the final question, I think all of our panelists will be sticking around, so please do make sure you get to them and get the question answered. Please give it up for this amazing panel. Knowledge, wisdom, heart, spirit. The future is in good hands. Thank you, and I think, oh. Thank you, Kiana. All right, thank you, Marcus. Oh, you got a mic.
All right. Everybody good? All right, one quick announcement before we break here. On your schedule at 4:30, there's a session that says USDA Farm Service Agency Cooperator Network Meeting. Note, if you are with an organization that has a cooperative agreement directly from USDA that's related to the initial 17 pilot cities, or you have a cooperative agreement with time, that session is for you to attend. That's an opportunity for you to engage with other cooperators, but also we will have representation there from the USDA's Farm Service Agency to answer questions. And so if you have a cooperative agreement in one of the 27 pilot cities for urban agriculture, and some of you may be saying, I don't know who that is. If you have an agreement, you know that's you, right? So that session is for you this afternoon, and refreshments will be served at that session. There was something else that Kim told me to remind you, but I forgot. I hope you enjoy the afternoon breakout sessions. And thank this wonderful panel again, and thank you, T, for moderating that.
I just want to say I have executive summaries of my plan, but I only have like 12, and one in Spanish. So if you're going to do a plan, I highly just suggest just come pick one up, but I only have 12 and one in Spanish.